So, welcome back to part 3. Part 3, we're going to be discussing what might work. And I think to find a solution, we might want to take a page from our colleagues who are sole practitioners. Sole practitioners have a challenging job because they always need to be 100% utilized. They have to plan their projects in a certain deliberate way, since they don't have the opportunity to staff up during design phase or to just throw people at a project like you would see in a mid-size or large firm. So they always have to keep the work steady and under control. They do this by balancing out the design and construction components of practice. In this case, the architect illustrated the diagram as spending 2/3 of their time on design at any given time, and 1/3 of their time on construction. Totally flexible. Maybe they actually do 2 projects at a time. To maintain 100%, they just have to keep that design phase and construction phase in proportion. More than that, they miss deadlines and get fired. Less than that, they can't pay the mortgage. So it's real high-stakes poker if you're a sole practitioner. You've got to keep this stuff balanced and arranged. As it turns out, there's an underlying geometry to this kind of thing, which we can examine by considering design and construction separately. Design and construction both have 2 fundamental dimensions related to our basic concept of work that we outlined in the introduction: phase length and staffing level, which correspond to time and effort from part 1. If you pull these into proportion, you get the following equation. Now, wherever this equation is satisfied, you should get a Tetris-like fit between the different pieces. This ratio is a basic geometric problem that determines how well all these projects are going to fit together and how consistent our overall staffing level is going to be. As architects tend to be geometric people, this should be intuitive, and certainly anybody who's ever laid brick or tile knows what I'm talking about. How would this work on a real-world example? The first step would be to estimate what I've been calling throughout the AI compression. The AI compression is the diminishing of the time and effort that AI is going to grant through increased productivity. In this case, I'm assuming that AI is going to reduce both effort and time by 40%. Why 40%? It's a little bit arbitrary, and it depends on you. If your firm doesn't adopt any AI or do anything AI-related, you're not going to get any productivity gains, so it'll just be 0. But in this case, we're using 40%, which I think is honestly kind of a conservative number. For construction, we're only going to compress by 20%. This disparity arises because construction involves immutable physical and chemical processes, such as concrete curing, which are less amenable to AI efficiencies or any technology. While the design cycle will likely compress substantially due to AI, the construction cycle's compression is just more constrained. Staffing levels in construction are less elastic due to external variables like project complexity and client requirements. As a result, the construction cycle is modeled to compress only by 20% in this instance. Once we compress the project, it looks like so. This is the same project from slide 1 that we're still working on. It's just been compressed to reflect AI. Now we can go back to our golden ratio and start filling in some of these blanks. The first 2 are easy. That's just the total amount of work that's left over after AI compression, whatever you estimate that to be. Next, we address the 2 variables for construction, because they're actually the easiest to estimate. As we noted, the processes of the contractor are more inelastic than the architects. If a school project took 24 months to build before AI, maybe it takes 22 or 20 months with full AI adoption. That is, until we have armies of completely autonomous robots building our construction projects, which is, I think, still several years off. The construction cycle is going to be close to what it is. Moreover, it's fundamentally on the contractors to tell us how long something is going to take, not for us to guess. To determine our internal numbers, an ideal staffing level is subjective, but essential for modeling. In this case, we're going to use 4. It will vary for everybody, but we'll just use 4 to show everybody how the math works. Once we've got the rest of these numbers plugged in, we can calculate the phase length of the design phase. With 4 staff members, our design phase should take 4.005 months. Does this work? No, not really. Kind of. It's optimal, but it's not successful. Let's take a closer look. You start stacking these projects up at a regular rhythm, and they're broken a little bit just to reflect that they're stacking on top of each other. I hope everybody realizes that. And as we pack these things up, those little crenellations that you see at the top of the diagram represent underutilization. So this is actually a full-time staff of 6. And these little white areas in between the crenellations, they fundamentally mean that someone is idle. The 6th person is actually idle for 2/3 of their time. Now, we can ameliorate this by stacking projects, right? So if we go up to 12, then all of a sudden, geometrically, you have a staff of 12 and things fit better together. And that just means that one person is underutilized for 1/3 of their time. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe you need that. You need that sort of flexibility. You need somebody to do marketing, whatever it is, right? But the point is, there's a geometric way to think about utilization and how we organize projects. So why does this utilization remain, and why is Eric talking to me about this golden ratio if it doesn't work? It's actually really easy to understand if you understand the equation itself. AI might speed things up, but it can't change the amount of work that actually needs to be done. The amount of design work on a given project isn't self-determined. It's determined by the project type and scope. The construction work is also not self-determined. It's determined by the owner's needs, the contractor's needs, the project type, scope, the budget, all the technical requirements. So the phase length of construction is set by the contractor, but largely constrained by physical realities. The staffing level for the architect is set by intent. In this case, we started with 4 and we arrived at 6. The staffing level for construction is set by the owner, project type, scope, etc. And the phase length for design has now been fixed by all previous factors. So the design phase length eventually ends up as just a result of the other decisions that we made. The total amount of work times divided by the staffing level, gives us our phase length which is 4.005 months. Now, if we wanted to completely eliminate underutilization, we'd need a perfect geometric fit. The only way to do this would be to have perfect proportions between the amount of design work and the amount of construction work. If we were able to do that, then we would get this really tight Tetris-like fit between our design and CA projects, and everything would always be in proportion, and that'd be great. We can't do that because most of those factors are out of our control. We don't have the option to make decisions on them. Still, we can achieve an optimal amount of utilization by coordinating the ratio between the 4 variables that we can influence, and we can plan our projects accordingly. By organizing the work geometrically according to the ratio, we can minimize underutilization and hopefully keep our people employed. So, quick recap. We have this historic project cycle. AI is probably going to affect it in 2 dimensions. It's going to result in less effort and less time. And this is going to have some pretty wonky effects on project cycles and project timelines and potentially employment. There's not a lot of good solutions to this because it creates all these wonky gaps in employment or just results in mass unemployment. The construction cycle isn't going anywhere. People are going to build things, probably mostly at the same rate they always did. AI may speed up the act of contracting a little bit, but probably not by much because concrete is concrete. So we're going to be left as designers with some difficult options. We can't afford to stack up projects like we historically have. And we can't afford to spread things out like shown here because no client is ever going to go for it. What we can do is take our project, make some estimates about how AI is going to affect our practice and the contractor's practice, how much time is going to be eliminated, how much effort is going to be eliminated, and based on that information, take it to our golden ratio, and we create a design phase that is proportional on 2 axes to the construction phase. And that gets us to a geometry that we can then work with and start planning out projects. That's also going to be weird, right? Because in order to make that work, it means you need a consistent level of staffing throughout the entire design phase. So you could be looking at pre-design rather than being, 50% of one person's time for a month. It's 100% of 4 people's time for 2 days. I'm not sure if that math works out, but the point is we're going to have to get a little bit flexible about this project cycle and how we organize it. Certainly, there's some other geometries to work, and I hope to hear about them from all of you, but fundamentally they have to obey certain constraints, such as proportional thinking between design and construction, and between different phases of construction. It's easy to imagine a project cycle like the one shown. Small, then a little bigger, and so on. This works well and gives you a perfect Tetris shape for projects and balancing staff loads. Since architects are probably watching this, any kind of pattern will fundamentally work at first glance. The traditional project cycle seems obsolete in a post-AI landscape. This upheaval presents an opportunity, I think, to reimagine the practice of architecture from how projects are conceived to client relationships, but our century-old practices aren't sacred. I think we need to think about them differently in this post-AI era.